As a result of all this, I've embraced and internalized the hopes and dreams of 20 million people who share the name New Yorkers. And I want you to know you are heard. And I'm ready to get to work as your governor to solve the big problems that this state faces. Your priorities are my priorities. And right now, that means fighting the Delta variant. None of us want a rerun of last year's horrors with COVID-19. Therefore, we will take proactive steps to prevent that from happening. Priority number one, we get children back to school and protect the environment so they can learn and everyone is safe. For months, I've been consulting with parents, elected officials, teachers, school boards, and superintendents. As a result, we need to require vaccinations for all school personnel with an option to test out weekly, at least for now. To accomplish this in New York, we need partnerships with all levels of government, and I'm working now on getting this done. New York is launching a back-to-school COVID-19 testing program to make testing for students and staff widely available and convenient. I'm also immediately directing the Department of Health to institute universal masking for anyone entering our schools. Later this week, I'll announce a series of school-related policies that will be concise and consistent, giving the school districts what they have been asking for. Which leads me to priority number two, increase vaccination rates for New Yorkers. Now, much progress has been made, but too many are yet not vaccinated, putting themselves and their communities at risk. With the FDA's full approval of the Pfizer vaccine yesterday, New Yorkers can expect new vaccine requirements, and more on that soon. Priority number three, prepare for booster shots and make sure they are available and distributed quickly and reliably. When I consulted with Dr. Fauci last week, we discussed the urgent need to ensure vaccinated individuals receive a booster dose at 8 months. I'm prepared to do whatever is necessary, including reopening mass vac sites so a booster is available to all New Yorkers who meet that timetable. These are my day one initiatives on COVID. There'll be more regular updates and announcements in the near future. Now let's talk about the COVID assistance for New Yorkers that is long overdue. President Biden and our federal delegation, led by Senators Schumer and Gillibrand, worked hard to secure funds for renters, landlords, workers, and more. But I am not at all satisfied with the pace that this COVID relief is getting out the door. I want the money out now. I want it out with no more excuses and delays. I met with Assembly Speaker Heastie and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins just earlier today, and we are unified in our sense of urgency that that money get out to the people in need. We're launching a new targeted campaign to reach more New Yorkers on rental relief. And we're forming a real partnership with legislators, the City of New York, other cities and counties to get the job done. I'm hiring more staff to process applications immediately. I'm also assigning a top team to identify and remove any barriers that remain. New Yorkers should know, if you apply and qualify for this money, you will be protected from eviction for a solid year. Let me repeat, if you apply and qualify, you will not be evicted for a year. And we'll take the same focused approach to our Excluded Workers Fund. The money is there, and these people are just as impacted by COVID, and they need help now. The final priorities I'll outline today are simple. Get this state working again, focused, without distractions. And that begins with a dramatic change in culture, with accountability and no tolerance for individuals who cross the line. Today, I'm directing an overhaul of state government policies on sexual harassment and ethics, starting with requiring that all training be done live, instead of allowing people to click their way through a class. And a new era of transparency will be one of my hallmarks of my administration. To me, it's very simple. We'll focus on open, ethical governing that New Yorkers will trust. I will direct state entities to review their compliance with state transparency laws and provide a public report on their findings. I've instructed my counsel to come up with an expedited process to fulfill all FOIL requests as fast as possible and post the completed requests publicly online. I'll sign an executive order requiring ethics training for every employee of New York State government, which shockingly is not required across the board. To recap, these are the highest priorities of my administration in its first days: combating Delta, getting direct aid to New Yorkers more quickly, and beginning to change the culture in Albany. To achieve all this, and so much more, we must and will work together. Across every corner of this state, we'll have a fresh and collaborative approach. I've already reached out my hand in friendship to many elected officials who too are eager for a new relationship with the state. You know, the Bible tells us there's a time for every purpose under heaven. I believe that. I believe that with every fiber of my body, that this is our time to escape the oppression of a deadly virus and make our schools and workplaces safe to return. It's our time to build trust between communities and law enforcement, invest in mental health resources, and address the root problems of crime and keep our residents and children safe. It's our time to make greater progress in ending the ugly specter of systemic racism. And it's our time to help small businesses and create new jobs for New Yorkers hit so hard by the pandemic. It's our time to unleash the power of New York's women and make sure that any barriers to success and opportunity are eradicated once and for all. And time to show the world that Ever Upward is more than just our state's motto. It's who we are, and it's where we're going. This is our time to look forward with a powerful sense of optimism and determination. It will not be easy, and we have a lot of work to do. But one of my favorite inspirations is from a speech by Teddy Roosevelt. It speaks of the man in the arena who's marred by dust and sweat and blood, in stark contrast to the timid souls on the sidelines. Today, for the first time in New York history, a woman will enter that arena as governor. As I undertake the weighty responsibilities before me, know that I have the confidence, the courage, and the ability to lead New Yorkers forward and make New York's women proud. You'll find me to be direct, straight-talking, and decisive. I will not be deterred, and I'm willing to be bloodied and marred in the pursuit of what's right for the people of this great state. My friends, I invite you to join me in this fight for our future. I only ask for your faith in me and for your prayers. God bless New York, and God bless America. Thank you.
Listen to the Booknotes Plus podcast with Brian Lamb every Tuesday.
From Alabama, that there is a need to protect the Democratic Republic. Someone wants to say Democrats and Republicans. No, this America is a Democratic Republic. Yeah. It is America's country. This is America's law. This is America's Constitution. And the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment guarantee, there are no slaves, but it guarantees our right to vote. And that's what Congresswoman Terry Sue has stood for in the John Robert Lewis bill. Ladies and gentlemen, Terry Sue from Alabama.
Well, let me just say, I'm Congresswoman Terry Sewell, and I proudly represent Alabama's Civil Rights District. It's the cities of Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Montgomery, and my hometown of Selma, Alabama. And I just want to say that to the Democratic Texas legislature, you guys are living up to the ideals that John Lewis espoused. He said that sometimes it's necessary to get into trouble. Yeah. He called it good trouble. Yeah. And so I am honored to stand with you all as you literally uphold good trouble. Right. And of course, you are represented mightily in Congress by the queen of good trouble, Sheila Jackson Lee. Yeah. I am so honored to not only call her a friend and a colleague, but a mentor. Yeah. She has really taken me under her wing, and I am in awe of her tenacity, her energy, her eloquence, and her courage. Thank you so much, Madam Soror, as I call you. And I just want to say that H.R. 4 is really about the people. Old battles have become new again. No longer are we allowed or told that we have to count how many bubbles there are in order to register to vote, or be able to recite how, the 67 counties in Alabama in order to vote. But I want you to know that the modern day barriers to voting are no less pernicious than those literacy tests and those poll tests. That's right. And what we must do, as we did back in the 60s, is when we see states running amok, we need federal oversight. Yes. If it wasn't for federal oversight, we not only would not have gotten the Voting Rights Act, we wouldn't have gotten the Civil Rights Act. That's right, that's right. Okay, so we know that when states like Texas and Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi and Louisiana, and the list goes on and on, we see that after the Shelby versus Holder decision, we saw states like North Carolina and Texas reinstate restrictive voting laws. And those voting laws are suppressive, oppressive, depressive. They stop the people who need to vote from voting. I often say that H.R. 4 is about restoring the vote, V-O-T-E, voices of the excluded. Yeah. Voices of the excluded. And I stand with these Texas Democrats as they stand up for the people. Yeah. That's what we need. Yeah. And I just also want to invoke John Lewis as I go back into the chamber. No more words have John said than to say that the vote is the most powerful nonviolent tool in our democracy. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And when states like Texas and Alabama go amok, we need to stand up and be guardians of that democracy. Right. We must be guardians of that democracy. So often I am reminiscent of the fact that I had an opportunity to bring Amelia Boynton to the State of the Union. She was 103 years old. She was the oldest living survivor of Bloody Sunday. And in 2015, on the cusp of the 50th anniversary of the Selma and Montgomery March, she came to this Capitol to be my special guest. And she was precious cargo at 103. Yeah. And to a person, everyone said the same thing to her. Oh, Miss Amelia, we stand on your shoulders. Oh, Miss Amelia, we stand on your shoulders. Well, out of the mouths of babes and our elderly, she said, get off my shoulders. Do your own work, is what she said. So I want you all to know that Texas Democrat state legislatures are doing their own work. You're doing your own work. And when she had an opportunity to finally meet Barack Obama right before he went out to give his State of the Union speech, she cradled his face. He kneeled down beside her wheelchair. And she cradled his face. I think all of us knew the import of that moment. he looked up at her and he said, I'm about to give a speech now as the President of the United States of America. And it's because of your courage. Without missing a beat, she said, make it a good one. That better be a really good speech. Because people sacrificed.
That's right.
People bled. Some people died for the right to vote. It is incumbent upon all of us as elected officials to stand up and make sure that people can elect their own elective representatives and not the other way around. We must do that, and we must get into some good trouble. You know, the price of freedom is never free.
That's right. Speak.
It's been bought and paid for by others. And we must take our own step into the annals of history. What will we be remembered for? What will we say that we've done to keep this dream alive, really? So I just want to end by saying that John Lewis also told us that when you see something that's not fair, that's not just, that's not right, we have a moral obligation to speak up and to speak out. So to my Texans, I say continue to speak up and speak out. Be a strong voice for the people that you represent. Let's restore the voices of the excluded. Let's pass H.R. 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry Sewell. With the salt, the water, and the good cooking of Alabama, I almost feel like I'm marching across that Edmund Pettus Bridge. Because she spoke of his words, and I will remind you of his courage. Just for the procedural understanding, if she steps away, don't let me miss the second vote. I will yield now for 30 seconds, and when I do this, you have to move from the podium because I cannot miss the second vote. And this is procedural. The media will not take this in. But I do want each of you to be honored with, as they say, in your own way. And so I'm going to give you, let's say I'm going to give you under 30 seconds when I feel that you have totally made your point. But I want you to introduce yourself and speak in your own way, because the narrative that I believe is true, why the author of H.R. 4 is here, and she did not hesitate, why the meeting with the speaker is going to come, because you are worthy of the dignity and the respect and the admiration for those who, without knowing him, many of you, got into good trouble, saw something wrong, and did something about it. Might I ask the chair to come forward for her moment now? Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lee and Representative Sewell. My name is Nicole Collier. I'm the chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus. Look, we left Texas because we knew the fix was in. We knew the writing on the wall that that all they were trying to do was make it harder to vote. They were not trying to increase or expand access to the ballot box. So we did all that we could do, and we left Texas and came to Washington because the answer is here. When we first got here, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act hadn't even been brought forth. And now today, they are about to vote on it.
Yay!
So we are grateful for the action of the House to make sure that they protect our freedom to vote and that all Americans will have their voice and their vote counted. Right now, I'd like to introduce my Vice Chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, Representative Ron Reynolds.
All right, there we go.
Yes, ma'am, I'm keeping it.
Thank you, Chair Collier. And I want to thank my own mentor, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, for her fearless leadership. And Congresswoman, you don't just represent the state of Texas, but you have been the representative for America when it came to speaking truth to power. And all of our colleagues are here on the right side of history fighting for their precious fundamental right to vote. As Congresswoman Sewell just stated, we stand on the shoulders of former Congressman John Lewis. And when I put on my Good Trouble mask today, I felt his presence and I feel his spirit invoked in all of the actions that are taking place. And I am so proud of my courageous colleagues from Texas that have been fighting since day one. And we're going to continue to fight until this bill is passed and then ask the United States Senate to do the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And who will be next? All right, introduce yourself. We have a meeting with the speaker, and I'm going to need to close.
Richard Pena Raymond, Laredo, Texas, the Hispanic with the most seniority in the Texas House of Representatives. We're here for a very simple reason, because we have a dream. We have a dream that someday every American who has a right to vote will be able to vote and not have to jump through all these hoops and all these forms of intimidation that are being contemplated across the country, including, regrettably, in the state of Texas. And finally, I'll say this. Yeah, we're going to fight. If you're going to fight against our ability to vote, then we will fight back. They want to put out arrest warrants for us? Put out arrest warrants for us. We will fight. We will fight, and we shall overcome. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Yes, I'm proud to be here with my colleagues from Jefferson County, Texas. We are here because we took an oath. We took an oath to protect the rights of our constituents. And when we face what we're facing down in Texas, we know that the best way to protect those rights is working with our congressional delegations and getting a bill that can preempt the damage that's being done by Senate Bill 7 down in our own very state. But we can get around that, and we can protect the citizens' right to vote, and that is what we gave an oath to do. And I thank all of my Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee, who has always been down in my district doing hurricanes every time, helping out, and I enjoyed working so much with her on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Anybody else?
Excuse me. Hello, I am Ana María Ramos. Soy Ana María Ramos, diputada estatal de la ciudad de Dallas, y estamos aquí para proteger el derecho al voto. Aquí nosotros creemos y vamos a seguir luchando por nuestra comunidad, por su voz. I'm Ana María Ramos from Dallas, and we're here because we believe voters are a resource to celebrate, not an obstacle to overcome. And we will continue to fight for our voters to continue to express their vote and to protect the freedom to speak up and to vote for their elected officials. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
I'm Carl Sherman from the state of Texas, Dallas, Texas. Congresswoman Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Sewell, for your leadership. Time is running out on democracy in Texas, but truth is marching on. Time is running out for the political insurrection that the legislators in the state of Texas are trying to do, but truth is marching on. And so I'm grateful to the support that we have gotten from the U.S. Congress, leadership under Sheila Lee Jackson and my Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Penny?
Go ahead. That's it.
Are we
I'll go.
You're okay? I'll go.
My name is Christina Morales. I represent Harris County, Houston, Latino district, and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee also represents that district. I just want to say to Americans and to Texans and to people of my district that we tried so hard to work with the Republicans in the Texas House. We offered amendments, we tried to negotiate, and they left us with no other option but to break quorum. It was a tool in our toolbox that we had enough folks to utilize, so we did it. And we waited for them to bring us back with compromise or negotiation, and all we got was arrest warrants. Listen, Republicans and Democrats alike take an oath of office, and the first sentence says, I take an oath to protect the Constitution. Where are our Republican colleagues when it comes to protecting our right to vote, our democracy? Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much.
There you go.
Representative?
I'll go next. I'm Penny Morales Shaw. I represent District 148 in Houston. And I just want to add, first, thank you, Congresswoman. I want to add that we have not forgotten the blood, sweat, and tears and lives that went before us to get and protect the right to vote. We have not forgotten why we left the state of Texas on July 12th to come and camp out at our U.S. Capitol. And we will not forget you, your children, and future generations and their right to vote, and therefore we will persist as long as it takes so that your democracy, your freedoms, and your right to vote, which is the essence of all of that, are protected and ensured. Thank you.
Jasmine Crockett, Dallas, HD 100. The only thing that I have to say is that everyone continues to celebrate the Texas Dems and talk about our sacrifices. But to be perfectly honest, our sacrifices pale in comparison to those that came before us. And so while we had colleagues that felt as if their sacrificial time was done, and they decided to go back and give the Republicans a quorum so that they could pass this oppressive bill There are those of us that said, we're not going back. We are going to continue the fight that we started because we said that we were fighting for voting rights, and the last I checked, we hadn't gotten them yet. So we are here because we do have the wonderful leadership of the Congresswoman out of Texas, Sheila Jackson Lee, who told us before our colleagues decided to head back to the floor and give that quorum that she was pushing for this vote. She told us that they were coming in early to make sure that they could push for this vote because Texans had fought so hard. So you know what? Our sacrifice is nothing compared to those that died. And so we are still standing because the job is not done. So we are going to take that first step today, thanks to the leadership of the great Congresswoman out of Houston. And we are going to stay here as long as it takes to make sure that we get to the finish line. And what is the finish line? What is the end goal, as so many of you like to say? It is voting rights for all in this country. Thank you.
All right. This is why I am honored. They will soon be meeting with the Speaker of the House. I'm honored that the Speaker, the third in line to the presidency, recognizes the narrative and the truth of their presence here. I want to close this opportunity and take maybe a few questions so that we will not lose our place to vote and also the momentum of this day. Just procedurally, as this vote passes, and I'm going to be assured that there will be no one that will stand in the midst and breach the singular power of justice. That no member who has had the benefit of this Constitution, who understands a democratic republic, will vote no on this rule. Those that choose to do so, minds will be lacking in memory to the January 6th insurrection and to the continued big lie that has caused violence and disruption and fights that I've never seen in this country. I want to bring tranquility and peace. I want to ground us in the Constitution, as our colleagues have cried out for. I want us to be unified, not in divisiveness, but to be on the floor of the House, as I said, as Americans. And so this Constitution, as far as I know, members, does not have a Republican page in here. There is not a Democratic page in here. And with that in mind, that has been the guidance upon which I have operated, and it is a premise of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Let me also say that I offered amendments to be able to, in essence, prohibit forever civil warrants on duly elected members that would deny them the right to their view of eliminating voter suppression. It was welcomed. What we decided to do is to introduce a separate bill, but as I've read H.R. 4, I believe that we will find room in that bill to address these issues under both H.R. 4 preclearance, and then Section 4, as well as Section 2. But I do want to conclude my remarks with the association with the Constitution. And that is, of course, the 13th Amendment freed the slaves. And it said that we could enforce that. As you well know, we just made a federal holiday, Juneteenth. It came out of the ashes and the soul of Texas that talked about the freedom of our slaves. Then the 14th Amendment, which indicates to the privileges that we have as citizens. But lo and behold, we have the 15th Amendment. I don't know why people don't read their Constitution and understand how it is grounded. And so H.R. 4 is consistent with the Constitution, and we will not be denied. We will not be denied. It will be on the desk of the President of the United States. It will become law. And we will not have these suppressive bills in 49 different states. We will methodically go to each of these states and not do damage, but we will do damage control. We will stand up against what is the dimission and the dilution of voting. We'll let every American vote unfettered, no matter whether they came on Pilgrim's Pride, or whether they came across the border or in a fishing boat, or whether they came in an airplane, or whether they first started as an enslaved person. And so the 15th Amendment said the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the account of race, color, previous condition of servitude. It is broadened by saying the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. As this has been amended, it has included language minorities. And as we looked at SB 7, it was attacking young voters. It was attacking the disabled. It was attacking legitimate elections when it was allowing the court, directing them to undo a legitimate election. That is the most heinous example of why we need H.R. 4. We're not finished yet. We're in the middle of voting for the rule. The test is coming. And we're leaving here to be part of that test. And then we'll debate. And we'll be able to pass that bill. And I think the momentum that has come about will not be undermined when we go to the United States Senate. Is there any quick question that we need to respond to? Yes. You are, I'm sorry. 30 seconds.
Well, I think this is very quickly going to become the John Lewis, Joe Manchin Act when it gets to the Senate. And so our focus will be on someone who we think can help bring the right to vote unfettered to the entire country, and that would be part of his legacy. So that's the way we look at it. The U.S. House is about to do their job thanks to the Congresswoman, the chair. Now it's time for the United States Senate and also for President Biden to step up.
Thank you.
No, we do not. It is not our intent to return to Texas to go be a part of that sham suppression COVID Latin legislative session. They have reintroduced the same bill that we originally left from. So they're not interested in negotiating, so we're not interested in hearing from them. So we will be here advocating for where we know we can get answers right here in Congress, and so we're going to support the efforts and work towards that passage. So we'll be here.
They obviously have to make their decision, but we hope that when they are returning, that they will have in their hand, they will be clutching in their hand H.R. 4, because one of the most serious 10-year actions that legislators can take is the redistricting, the redrawing of lines for innocent human beings to be able to have their right to vote and select a person of their choosing. And right now, the construct of the Texas legislature and the governor and the lieutenant governor is to ensure that that vote is diminished and that it is diluted, and in order to be protected in redistricting, again, not Republican or Democratic, but to ensure people have the right to vote under the Constitution, the H.R. 4, we're pushing for that to move forward. Some of the opposition on the floor was telling states what to do. I have no desire to tell states what to do. I only have a desire that my innocent voters who are not elected, they're not governors, they're not lieutenant governors, have their right protected to vote. Thank you. All right, thank you guys. We have to go in. Y'all go over to the overhang and I'll get you in.
Picture with you.
Okay.
We both got our.
Yes. I guess
Just real quick. Got it.
Okay.
Thank you,
just wait for me. You're giving that out? I got it. Is she still here? Let's take them over to the overhang.
down the presence. I will note, though, that the purpose of this statement is to provide additional context of what the president conveyed to the G7, which includes a number of very key components as he assesses day by day. And that includes the threat of ISIS, which is of great concern, understandably, to the president, given the threat it poses to our military, who are on the ground, serving proudly and bravely on the ground. It also includes the essential aspect of having the Taliban's coordination continue over the coming days so we can facilitate as many people as we've been getting out.
And so what I read from this statement is he has not ruled out extending the deadline. Is that right?
Well, he asked for contingency plans, but believes we continue to be on track to accomplish our mission.
And one more question, Jen. Sorry, I know it's 30. Does this mean if he does stand by this August 31st deadline that every single U.S. troop will be out of Afghanistan by August 31st?
Again, I will leave it to the Department of Defense to get into operational details. As you know, and as I've noted, he is meeting with his national security team every single day, often more than once a day, to continue to discuss. And as I noted also in this statement, he's asked for contingency plans. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Just to follow up on Amar's question, so are you saying that despite this threat by the Taliban to stop Afghans from boarding planes, that you're not seeing any slowdown in Afghans being able to get to the airport if they need to?
I'm conveying that what we have articulated is that Afghans, there are millions of Afghans, as we know, who want to leave the country, or a large number of Afghans who want to leave the country. I think that's safe to say. What I'm talking about is the individuals we have prioritized, those who have fought alongside us, who are eligible for special immigrant visas, who otherwise we are facilitating their departure, and that our expectation is that they will be able to reach the airport.
So I'm just trying to figure out if the Taliban has made good on this threat yet, and it sounds like you're saying they haven't.
I don't have an update on that. I'm just conveying to you what our expectation is and what we are continuing to communicate directly.
And then is the CIA director now the chief negotiator for the U.S. in Kabul, and how long does he plan to stay there?
I certainly understand your question. I refer you to the CIA on any specific questions about his location or specific role. Go ahead.
For a little bit of clarity, because minutes and hours matter here. When we talk about August 31st, is the understanding between the U.S. and the Taliban that ends at midnight at the end of August 31st, Afghan time, American time? Is it the end of the 30th, heading into the 31st? When exactly is the deadline as it currently exists?
It's really a great question, and I want to give you a very clear and articulate answer from the team on the ground, so I'll just have to get back to you on that to make sure we give you the accurate information.
What is the last, I know you're continuing to do this actively,
yeah.
You indicated to one of my colleagues a moment ago, obviously, there's going to be time needed to be able to get out the American troops and others who are helping facilitate this process. What is the last call for Americans on the ground there to come to the airport at Kabul?
We are in touch with Americans directly, and we have contact with, and I can give you an overall assessment of where we stand with that, if that's helpful as well, but I'm not going to give you more of an articulation of that from here.
Are there any active threats? You talked about in that statement the threat that's posed by ISIS-K, but are there any active threats to Kabul, to HKIO right now?
I'm not going to give you an intelligence assessment from here either, but I can convey to you that we have increasing concerns about the threats, and that is certainly a part of the president's assessment and decision making. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Is there any concern that maybe trying to reach this deadline and get everybody out, mistakes are being made now that there is a report that at least one of the Afghans evacuated to Qatar has suspected ISIS ties?
Well, first I would say we have a stringent vetting process which includes background checks before any individual comes to the United States. So I can't speak to one individual, but I can tell you and confirm for you that we take the vetting of any individual who comes to the United States and comes out incredibly seriously, and it's an extensive process. I would say that this is now on track, Peter, to be the largest airlift in U.S. history. And that is bringing American citizens out, it is bringing our Afghan partners out, it is bringing allies out. So no, I would not say that is anything but a success.
Okay, and I know that you said yesterday it's irresponsible to say that Americans are stranded in Afghanistan right now. What do you say to the American citizen in Kabul that Fox spoke to this morning? Her name is, she's going by Fatima. She says, we are stranded at home for 4 days, 3 days. We didn't hear anything from anywhere, and they're saying to go to the airport, but we're not being given clear guidance. Our emails are getting ignored.
Well, why don't I convey to you exactly what we are doing? And I think what's important to note that I also said yesterday in the full context of my answer, which I put out today, was that we are committed to bringing Americans home who want to leave, and that is the president's commitment. So let me explain to you how our process works, and there have been some very good questions, including from you and from others, about this. One, as we've said, this is a dynamic number. We're working hour by hour to refine and make it precise. Understand your desire and interest in having exact number of American citizens on the ground, and the State Department, I expect, will have an exact update on that tomorrow. Just to remind you, the U.S. government does not track our citizens when they travel around the world. We rely on self-reporting, not just in Afghanistan, anywhere in the world. People have to decide to register or not. It's up to them, individuals, whether they decide to register or not, wherever they may be. And if you register when you're in a country like Afghanistan, you aren't required to deregister. The State Department also issues alerts. They have publicized phone number and email to contact if you're in Afghanistan and want assistance to leave. And for months, the department has been telling Americans to leave Afghanistan for their own safety. It is our responsibility and our role to work with and help American citizens who want to leave. Let me finish. I'm almost done, and then you can ask a follow-up question. In recent days, they have reached out to every American citizen registered in Afghanistan directly multiple times. This is a 24/7 operation. Embassies all over the world are supporting phone banking, text banking, and email efforts. If we are not in touch with this individual, give me their contact information and we will get in touch with them. If any of you are hearing from American citizens who can't reach us, give me their contact information and we will get in contact with them. Our estimate of the overall number of American citizens who are there can increase because folks are just now responding to our outreach who may not have registered. It can also decrease because people leave, they don't tell us they leave, or individuals who may reach out and convey they have the documentation needed don't. So there are a range of factors here, and it's our responsibility to give you accurate information.
But
that's what our focus is on.
You say no Americans are stranded. This is someone in Kabul who says, I am stranded. So is there a better word for somebody who can't leave the house to get to the airport because Jake Sullivan says ISIS is outside the airport?
I would welcome you providing their phone number, and we will reach out to them today, and I can assure you of that.
The final question. If the Taliban said that staying past the 31st was going to provoke a reaction, and then President Biden decides, okay, we won't stay, do they have the same kind of influence over military planning as the commander-in-chief?
Well, first of all, Peter, the Taliban's deadline was May 1st, struck in a deal with the prior administration. The president's timeline was August 31st. That's the timeline he set in a period of time he needed in order to operationalize our departure from Afghanistan. I'd also note that, as I said, as we conveyed in the statement, that our objective and our focus and the focus of the commander-in-chief is always going to be on the safety and security of the men and women who are serving our country in the military. And that has to be a factor here, and that certainly is a factor for him as he thinks about the timeline. Go ahead.
Can President Biden assure that Afghan allies that help the military will be able to get out, and will he extend a deadline to help those people get out?
Well, I will say that we will certainly have additional folks eligible to come to the United States after August 31st that we will help relocate. But I would also note that we have now evacuated 58,700 people in the last 9 days. And we are continuing to be in direct contact with eligible special immigrant visa applicants, of course with American citizens, and with individuals who we are working to facilitate their departure. So our focus is on getting the job done by August 31st, and that's what we're doing day to day at this point.
And secondly, on the vetting question, we're seeing more debate in across the country about as the refugees come here. What is the White House doing to convey the vetting standards and to assure any kind of state officials that people that may end up in their state are okay?
Well, first, no one is coming to the United States who has not gone through a security vetting process. I would note, to Peter's earlier question, for people who we evacuated who had not yet completed security vetting under the usual SIV application process, in the interest of getting them out of Afghanistan to third countries, we are also front-loading our security screening to complete the steps that have proven most likely to surface derogatory information while these Afghans remain at transit sites in Europe and the Middle East before they arrive here. So actually, to go back to his earlier question, because it's all related, it's actually the system working. And we have a vetting process and a background check that can happen in advance of individuals coming to the United States if they've gone through the SIV process, or individuals who have been moved to third countries before they move further.
Just to follow up real quickly, so is there going to be an education campaign? Is there going to be information sent to stakeholders across the country who may have some concern?
Oh, sorry. Do you mean domestically here in the United States?
That's correct.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, I was misunderstanding your question. Yes, we are in touch with governors. We are in touch with local authorities. We are in touch with communities. We've been engaging with local media, and we will continue to do that. So there's an understanding of the stringent process that we have in place before individuals come to the United States. And I think a part of that is also a reminder that these are individuals who fought alongside the United States over the last 20 years. And that's part of who we are as a country and part of the fabric of the United States. So that's part of it as well. But in terms of the specific vetting components, yes, we are absolutely thinking about that and ensuring we are communicating that effectively, or that's our objective. Go ahead.
Can you share more about the possible incident of Havana syndrome that delayed the Vice President's trip?
Sure. First, I will say that the Vice President is now in country in Vietnam, and certainly we take very seriously. Let me just get the information so I can get it to you very clearly. Hold on one second. A lot going on today, I will just note. No shortage. Okay, so we of course take any reported incident of Havana syndrome seriously. And while this is not a confirmed case at this point in time, we take any reported incident, which was recent and was reported publicly, I will note, quite seriously. As a result, there was an assessment done of the safety of the Vice President, and there was a decision made that she could continue travel along with her staff. It was not a person traveling in her party or anything along those lines.
Does the White House believe she was targeted or somebody on her team may have been targeted?
That is not an assessment that's been made. It was an individual who was in country, and it had been reported previously.
Okay. Can you confirm that it was two embassy staffers?
I don't have any additional detail beyond that.
Okay, and one on Afghanistan. For Afghans who are at risk in Afghanistan, who won't be able to get out in time, how will the U.S. try to keep them safe after August 31st?
Well, I think, as I just said in response to, I think, Alex's question, there are individuals who will be eligible after who we expect, who will certainly be eligible after August 31st, and we are determining how operationally we can deliver on that. It's a good question. I don't have an update right now. Go ahead.
I have a question about a report on the conditions in Doha. It was reported by Axios today. A U.S. Central Command internal email described the housing for thousands of evacuees as, quote, awash with loose feces and urine and a rat infestation, a life-threatening humanitarian disaster. Is the president aware of these conditions, and is there anything going on to improve them?
Absolutely, and I think the report is actually from a couple of days. I understand it was in Axios this morning, but I believe that the conditions were a report from several days ago, and certainly the State Department and other officials who are working in close coordination with countries who are hosting individuals as they're passing through, or maybe as they're landing there for a longer period of time, or have been working to improve those conditions.
We can say about how they've improved over the past few days?
I'm happy to get you an update on that, but it is something we are aware of. It is something we worked quickly to improve, and certainly we want the individuals who are being evacuated to be treated with respect. We also want them to be safe, hence the speed necessity, but we worked to improve the conditions as soon as we learned. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. In the statement that you released, you said the president conveyed that our mission in Kabul will end based on the achievement of our objectives. Can you be more specific about what those objectives would be? Are we talking about getting all Americans out, a certain number of Afghans out who helped the American effort? What will be the specific sort of benchmarks in deciding that the objectives of the mission have been met?
Well, the statement also conveys in evacuating Americans who want to come home, third country nationals, and Afghans who are allies during the war. And we, again, have evacuated 58,700 people in the last 9 days. That is the mission we're continuing to work to deliver on. We also noted in the statement, that, of course, we have to assess the security threats. And the security threats not only to individuals on the ground, to the men and women serving on the ground. I mean, that is front and center in the president's mind.
So that means all the individuals in the categories that you note in the statement.
Again, I think we've been clear that our objective is to any American who wants to leave, to help them leave. That is what we're focused on every single day. I don't have anything more to add beyond what I said in the statement.
Can I ask one follow-up? Putting aside the specific activities of the CIA director, why did the president decide to dispatch him to meet with the Taliban?
I'm just not going to have any more on this. As we've noted and confirmed many times in the past, we are in regular contact with the Taliban. They are currently overseeing most of the country of Afghanistan. So by necessity, that's part of the jobs of our national security team. But for any details on the CIA director, I'd point you to the CIA. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. During the COVID response team briefing, Jeff Zients gave some overall statistics about the allotment of personnel, ventilators, and ambulances across the country.
Sure.
Do you all have a state-by-state breakdown of that, or even more granular?
I can certainly check. You mean in terms of materials we've provided to states?
Resources go.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm certainly due. We can see if that's something we can get out to you as well.
And then I have a question on Section 1005 of the American Rescue Plan, which is the debt relief for farmers of color. This has obviously been mired now down in, I believe, 13 lawsuits. Obviously, these farmers that still need debt relief. Is the administration exploring any other ways of getting these resources to farmers of color under this program or under an alternative scheme through the administration?
Well, as you noted, there is active litigation, and obviously we had proposed plans to provide assistance to these farmers, and hence, and there's active litigation that's ongoing. But I can convey to you that our commitment is to certainly help these farmers. I would point you to the Department of Agriculture for any more specifics about their programs, but I know that equity is central to their objectives, and certainly is part of how they orchestrate any of their programs. Go ahead.
Thanks. Do you know what the tenor of the G7 meeting was today? Was there any dissatisfaction expressed by some of the allies? Can you say if they conveyed some of their displeasure with the U.S. actions or the president's actions?
I know Bloomberg has reporters all around the world, and I will let them report on their leaders and not kind of give an evaluation of their tenors. But
Can you also say if it's accurate that the U.S. is already starting to reduce the number of U.S. troops in Afghanistan?
I would point you to the Department of Defense for any operational specifics. I know they'll brief again today. Go ahead.
Just a couple of quick clarifications. Earlier today, the Pentagon said that it's about 4,000 Americans who have been evacuated. Can you provide a bit additional context? Was that on military flights and charters? Anything else you could say about who these people were and whether that gives you any more of a sense of how many remain in Afghanistan?
Well, I would say it's more than 4,000 Americans plus their families. So it's actually a larger number than that. But yes, more than 4,000 passport holders or American citizens plus their families. In terms of their mechanism for departure, it's a very good question. I don't have that level of detail in front of me, but we can see if we can break that down more specifically. So you're asking about whether they came on military planes or charter planes?
Yeah, earlier you had been kind of breaking those two.
Sure.
We did this military plus charter.
Yes, which we will continue to do, but I will see if there's more of a concrete breakdown for you.
And are you able to say at this point, if the indication is that this has to go beyond the deadline, is that something that would be telegraphed or indicated beforehand, or would that be a last-minute decision or announcement from the government?
Well, again, I mean, I think as we stated in the statement I put out earlier, we are currently on pace to finish by August 31st. But the president also asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency plans. We'll let them brief him on those before we give a further assessment. Go ahead. I'll come back to you, April. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Two questions on the Vice President's trip delay.
Sure.
The last-minute delay of the flight suggests that her and her team found out about this case of anomalous health incident last minute. How last minute was it? When did the case occur? And are you concerned with the timing given her travel?
Again, I think this is similar to Stephanie's question. There hasn't been any additional assessment about any targeting, as I think you're asking about. It hasn't even been a confirmed case at this point in time. And certainly, it shouldn't be a surprise that for the Vice President of the United States that additional precautions were taken. It was a recent case and one that was publicly reported.
The embassy in Hanoi said that there was a thorough assessment before she proceeded on with her trip. If the government genuinely doesn't know what's causing these incidents, then how can you guarantee the Vice President's security?
I'm not going to get into security details. I can assure you that the Vice President of the United States wouldn't travel further to a country if there wasn't confidence in her security on the ground. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, April, go ahead.
Jen, as you said, there's a lot going on. Just across the street, maybe an hour or so ago, there were voting rights activists who said the president needs to do more. They also said that the president needs to lean in on the filibuster in the Senate as the House is expected to pass voting rights H.R. 4 today. What is the thought behind that from the White House as people of all walks of life are out there saying that he needs to do more, that this president is not doing enough for the constituency that he said that he was going to work for?
Well, I would say first that voting rights and ensuring access to voting continues to be a central priority for the president. And in any White House and for any president, you have to do many things at one time. And he certainly is the first to understand that. But he stands by the activists and their vocal calls for more and for he's with them. He's maybe not the right target of their frustration, because his objective is also to get voting rights legislation passed, and he would like to sign that legislation into law.
But he doesn't believe in ending the filibuster, and that's the big hurdle in the Senate. And they are saying that we are now voting like we voted in 1964. Voting rights has been stripped by the Supreme Court twice, and now there are restrictive laws in states that are precluding free and fair voting in this nation.
Absolutely, April, and it's outrageous, and the president is outraged by it. And that's why he has asked his vice president to lead this effort. That's why he has taken steps, including a historic executive order on voting rights. That's why he has supported the efforts by the Attorney General and the Department of Justice to continue to take steps that are at their disposal to crack down on these abuses across the country, and why he will continue to make this a central priority for him. Go ahead, Karen. I think we got to keep going because we're going to run out of time.
They said you were going to talk about yesterday. We don't know what happened yesterday. Was he in support of taking the knee, support of police reform, or was he just kneeling? Because we were told to ask you.
Well, the president certainly supports police reform, but he also was taking a photo with a sports team, and he has also kneeled on other occasions with sports teams in the past. Go ahead, Karen.
To follow up on some of the questions about your statement, when you say there that he's asked the Pentagon and State Department for contingency plans to adjust the timeline should that become necessary, what metric would determine whether that becomes necessary? What is the president looking for?
Well, Karen, I think it's not as simple as a metric. I understand your question, but for any president, they're making a risk assessment in coordination with their teams. And the threat from ISIS-K is real. The possibility of a deterioration of coordination with the Taliban is real. Putting our service members at risk is real. And those are certainly part of the president's decision-making in any regard. And again, we continue to be on track. It's been 9 days. We've evacuated 58,700 people. Right now, it's the 24th. We have about 7 days until the 31st, and we're going to continue to press hard to get American citizens out, get our Afghan partners out, SIV applicants, and others who are eligible for departure out.
And can you update us on the president's engagement with members of Congress this week, specifically on Afghanistan? Who's he talking to on this, and just some of the conversations he's had?
Well, the president has had a range of conversations with members of Congress. A lot of them have been about his Build Back Better agenda, a range of Democrats from across the political spectrum. I don't have an assessment for you of how many of those have included questions from them about Afghanistan. I can confirm for you, which is often the case, we have been doing a number of briefings from our national security team with members of Congress, some of them in a classified briefing, and we'll continue to do that and remain closely engaged with our process and our progress on the ground. Go ahead.
In the statement today, you said that the mission in Kabul would end up in the achievement of our objectives. What percentage of Afghan allies would constitute achieving that objective?
I'm not going to put a number on that for you, nor have we put a cap on how many special immigrant visa applicants there can be, or how many individuals who would be eligible for any of our range of programs could come to the United States. We're going to continue to work to process. We're going to continue to evacuate. We're going to continue to work with nearly 24 partners around the world to move people out of the country.
The administration used federal funding as a lever to push nursing homes and vaccinated workers. Has the administration considered using Title I funding for schools to push vaccination requirements for teachers?
Well, I would say first that we've seen, including recently, I think today or yesterday in Missouri, additional steps taken that in our view, put more kids at risk. The president thinks that's completely unacceptable, and he has asked his Secretary of Education and directed, I should say, his Secretary of Education to use all his authority to help those school districts doing the right thing to ensure every one of their students has access to a fundamental right of safe in-person learning. This can include a number of considerations, but I'll let the Secretary speak to that. I'll let the Secretary speak to it, but the President has directed him to use every authority to ensure we're protecting kids across the country. Go ahead.
You mentioned today that we can provide you with information about those who are stranded, and I think a lot of us in this room are getting calls or know at least one person there.
Yeah.
Is there a better way that the White House can create these more direct connections to these people? Because it seems to be like we have more access than these people. So just wondering how these people can directly contact.
One, anyone who has an American citizen who they are looking to help get out. Any of you, send them to me directly and I will get it to the right place. We are absolutely committed to this. This is an across the government commitment. Why I laid out all the specific steps we're taking is because I wanted to provide an understanding of what we're doing from here. Anyone we have contact information for, and it is possible that the person you know or the person Peter knows, we may not have contacted or the right contact information. That is also entirely possible. We are reaching out via phone, via text, via email, any way we can. And we're giving them instructions on how to get to the airport, when to come to the airport. We have an entire apparatus and operation set up on the ground. We're advertising, and this is a 24/7 operation of reaching out to these individuals.
Regarding the Vice President, was she in contact with these people that were experiencing these symptoms, rather?
No.
And then did she get medically evaluated?
There was a security assessment made. She was not on the ground yet. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Two questions. Yesterday, the Biden administration announced sanctions against a top military Eritrea is for human rights abuses in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Is the administration planning to extend those sanctions to the Prime Minister of Ethiopia and the President of Eritrea? And how is the president going to be as involved in the crisis in Ethiopia the same way he was engaged in the crisis between Palestinian and Israel?
Well, I can certainly confirm those sanctions. As you noted, I don't have anything to preview for you in terms of additional sanctions. Obviously, we continue to evaluate, reserve that right should that be a recommendation made and something the president approves. And I will certainly note that the president, we are closely tracking, we are closely engaged with high-level officials in the situation on the ground. Go ahead.
I have a follow-up question, please.
Thank you.
Okay, I just have a few more minutes, but in case we got to gather, so I just want to get around to as many people as possible. We'll just keep track of it, but go ahead.
As a follow-up to Jennifer's question about the G7 virtual meeting this morning. From a White House point of view, when that meeting was over, was the president satisfied that the message had gotten through to them? Did you think there was a consensus among those leaders? Was there a lot of pushback, or were you happy with how it ended? Let's put it that way.
I appreciate the different way of asking the question, which is very creative. I will say first, the president is about to give an update, both on the progress that is being made in the House and also his meeting with the G7 leaders. I know that was now several hours ago, but we wanted to wait as there was progress being made in the House for him to give that statement so he can speak to that, and he will speak clearly to what he conveyed to them directly to give you all a sense. In terms of the assessment from others, again, I would point you to them on any further.
Satisfied with it at the end?
Well, I think the president felt he conveyed what his position is, and part of his position, which was a big part of his decision as it related to bringing our troops home, and is also a huge factor for him now, is about what we're asking the men and women in the military to do. And obviously the decision to bring them home related to fighting a war that the Afghans, it of course is a factor for him, what threats are being posed to them every day that they are on the ground there. Go ahead.
Thank you. Two quick questions. How do you describe U.S. relationship with Taliban now? Do you think is a de facto ruler of Afghanistan now?
Well, I would say first that it is true that they have taken over much of Afghanistan, but this is not about trust. This is not about validation. Right now, we are working with them in a coordinated way to get American citizens, to get special immigrant visa applicants, to get individuals who are eligible to evacuate from Afghanistan out either to third countries or to the United States. But I'm not going to put a further label on it than that.
That the Taliban has included former President Karzai and Dr. Abdullah in their 12-member governing council. How do you see this development as?
I don't have an update on their discussions at this point in time from here. Go ahead.
Hi, Jen.
Oh, I'll come back to you. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Sheer Stein from Bloomberg Law. Would the president accept a Build Back Better package that doesn't include Medicare drug pricing negotiation?
Certainly lowering the price of prescription drugs is a top priority to the president. That's why he proposed it. I'm not going to negotiate from here, but I also know there's a lot of support in Congress for that initiative. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Follow up on the metrics question. And it's hypothetical, but it's not totally unrealistic.
I love hypotheticals.
No,
They're my favorite.
This is not unrealistic. It's probably the kind of thing a lot of
Go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't mean to. Go ahead.
Okay. Say after the withdrawal, it's done. It's declared. It's done. Everyone's out. If one U.S. citizen was suddenly discovered, saying, "Hey, I really want to get out, and I'm stuck, who knows where, somewhere in Afghanistan or in Kabul," he's got any problem? Would this be a diplomatic, military, all hands on deck type thing to get that person out, whatever the date?
Our commitment continues to be to U.S. citizens. If they want to leave, we will help get them out.
No matter what the date.
Again, we expect there could be some, but I'm not going to get into it further. Go ahead.
Thanks, Dan. Quick question to follow up on. You said the president's been in touch with members about the Build Back Better plan. I wonder, did he have direct conversations with this group of 10 moderates who were in talks with the speaker about advancing, the bipartisan package versus the reconciliation bill? Did he have direct contact with them, or did he reach out to them at all as they were trying to kind of broker this agreement?
He spoke with a range of members, including some from the group of 9, I believe it is, about the path forward. And obviously, we're seeing progress, and that's a good sign, and the president will speak to it shortly. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen.
Oh, okay. We've got to wrap up in a second here.
Thanks, Jen. Following up on Jennifer's and Bob's question again on G7, and that is that Tony Blair wrote a pretty scathing op-ed claiming that that President Biden's decision put politics over policy. And also, the question is here, first of all, how does the White House respond to that? And also, there's this lingering question that the president has had this impulse to get out of Afghanistan. He even had an interaction with former diplomat Holbrooke that said, where Holbrooke said, listen, we have a duty to these people. And the vice president reportedly had answer to that. What is your response?
Well, I would first say that was clearly more than 10 years ago. Second, if it happens, which I have no confirmation of, but I would say first that the president has been in touch directly with Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who is the current leader of the UK, and has been clear with his G7 partners about what his objectives are, his commitment to the mission, the progress we're making, and the factors that he has considered. And that is something he's in touch with current leaders about. We also understand that allies and partners of ours and adversaries for different reasons have advocated for the United States and our men and women in the military staying longer. But as the President of the United States and the Commander-in-Chief of this country, he has to factor in their security, their safety, and that is his responsibility, even if it's not theirs. Thanks, everyone. You're going to see the President shortly.
Thank you.
The first thing we did was to write and pass the American Rescue Plan, and it's working. Our economy has added 4 million jobs in my first 6 months in office. Economic growth is up to the fastest it's been, the fastest rate in 40 years, and unemployment is coming down. Right now, our economic growth is leading the world's advanced economies. But to win the future, we need to take the next step. Today, the House of Representatives did just that. Today's vote in the House allowed them to consider my Build Back Better agenda, a broad framework to make housing more affordable, bring down the cost of prescription drugs by giving Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices for drugs, make elder care more affordable, provide 2 years of free universal high-quality pre-K and 2 years of free community college, provide clean energy tax credits, continue to give the middle-class families the well-deserved tax cut for daycare and health care that they deserve, allowing a lot of women to get back to work primarily, and provide significant monthly tax cuts for working families with children through the child care tax credit. These investments are going to lower out-of-pocket expenses for families and not just give them a little more breathing room. In addition, we're going to make long overdue, much-needed investments in basic, hard infrastructure of this nation. This is an area where we have broad bipartisan agreement to invest in our antiquated roads, highways, bridges, transit, drinking water systems, broadband, clean energy, environmental cleanup, and making infrastructure more resilient to the climate crisis, and so much more. And this is all paid for. Instead of giving every break in the world to corporations and CEOs, by the way, 55 of our largest companies in America paid $0 in federal taxes on more than $40 billion in profit last year. We can ask corporations and the very wealthy just to pay their fair share. They can still be very wealthy, they can still make a lot of money, but just begin to pay their fair share. So we can invest in making our country stronger and more competitive, create jobs and raise wages, and lift up the standard of living for everyone. The bottom line is, in my view, we're a step closer to truly investing in the American people, positioning our economy for long-term growth, and building an America that outcompetes the rest of the world. My goal is to build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not just the top down. And that's what we're on our way of doing. Look, I want to thank Speaker Pelosi, who was masterful in her leadership on this, and Leader Hoyer and Whip Clyburn and Chairman DeFazio, the entire House leadership team for the hard work, dedication, and determination to bring people together so we can make a difference in people's lives. I also want to thank every Democrat in the House who worked so hard over the past few weeks to reach an agreement and who supported the process for House consideration of the Jobs and Infrastructure Plan, the Build Back Better effort. There were differences, strong points of view. They're always welcome. What is important is that we came together to advance our agenda. And I think everyone who did that, I think everyone who did it was there. Look, I also want to thank everyone who voted to support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. You know, advancing, it's an act to restore and expand voting protections, to prevent voter suppression, and to secure the most sacred of American rights, the right to vote freely, the right to vote fairly, and the right to have your vote counted. The House is active. The Senate also has to join them to send this important bill to my desk. And the Senate has to move forward on the People's Act, critical legislation to protect our democracy and the right to vote. We need both of those election bills. But let me now turn to Afghanistan. I've met this morning with my counterparts in the G7, as well as heads of the United Nations, NATO, and the European Union. I express my thanks for the solidarity we have seen as we've stood up an unprecedented global effort. I updated our partners on the significant progress we made in the past 10 days. As of this afternoon, we've helped evacuate 70,700 people just since August the 14th, 75,900 people since the end of July. Just in the past 12 hours, another 19 U.S. military flights, 18 C-17s and 1 C-130 carrying approximately 6,400 evacuees, and 31 coalition flights carrying 5,600 people have left Kabul just in the last 12 hours. A total of 50 more flights, 12,000 more people since I updated you this morning. These numbers are a testament to the efforts of our brave service women and men, to our diplomats on the ground in Kabul, and to our allies still standing with us. And we had a productive discussion. There was strong agreement among the leaders about the evacuation mission underway, as well as the need to coordinate our approach to Afghanistan as we move forward. First, on evacuation, we agreed that we will continue to our close cooperation to get people out as efficiently and safely as possible. We are currently on a pace to finish by August the 31st. The sooner we can finish, the better. Each day of operations brings added risk to our troops. But the completion by August 31st depends upon the Taliban continuing to cooperate and allow access to the airport for those who we're transporting out and no disruptions to our operations. In addition, I've asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency plans to adjust the timetable should that become necessary. I'm determined to ensure that we complete our mission, this mission. I'm also mindful of the increasing risks that I've been briefed on and the need to factor those risks in. They're real and significant challenges that we also have to take into consideration. The longer we stay, starting with the acute and growing risk of an attack by a terrorist group known as ISIS-K, an ISIS affiliate in Afghanistan, which is the sworn enemy of the Taliban as well. Every day we're on the ground is another day we know that ISIS-K is seeking to target the airport and attack both U.S. and allied forces and innocent civilians. Additionally, thus far, the Taliban have been taking steps to work with us so we can get our people out. But it's a tenuous situation. We've already had some gunfighting break out. We run a serious risk of it breaking down as time goes on. Second, the G7 leaders and the leaders of the EU, NATO, and the UN all agreed that we will stand united in our approach to the Taliban. We agreed the legitimacy of any future government depends on the approach it now takes to uphold international obligations, including to prevent Afghanistan from being used as a base for terrorism. And we agreed that none of us are going to take the Taliban's word for it. We'll judge them by their actions, and we'll stay in close coordination on any steps that we take moving forward in response to the Taliban's behavior. At the same time, we renewed our humanitarian commitment to the Afghan people and supported a proposal by the Secretary General Guterres of the United Nations-led international response with unfettered humanitarian access in Afghanistan. Third, we talked about our mutual obligation to support refugees and evacuees currently fleeing Afghanistan. The United States will be a leader in these efforts, and we'll look to the international community and to our partners to do the same. We're already seeing our allies' commitment. They're bringing to their countries the Afghans who served alongside their forces as translators or in their embassies, just as we're bringing to the United States those Afghans who worked alongside our forces and diplomats. We're continuing that effort. We're conducting thorough security screening in the intermediate stops they're making for anyone who is not a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident of the United States. Anyone arriving in the United States will have undergone a background check. And we must all work together to resettle thousands of Afghans who ultimately qualify for refugee status. The United States will do our part, and we are already working closely with refugee organizations to rebuild a system that was purposely destroyed by my predecessor. Finally, we agreed to stay vigilant against terrorist threats that have metastasized around the world. We went to Afghanistan with our allies in 2001 for clear reasons. One, to get the people who attacked us on 9/11 and to get Osama bin Laden. and to make sure that Afghanistan was not used again as a base from which to attack the United States or our allies. We achieved that objective. We delivered justice to bin Laden more than a decade ago. But the current environment looks very different than it did in 2001. And we have to meet the challenges we face today. We run effective counterterrorism operations around the world, where we know terrorism is more of a threat than it is today in Afghanistan, without any permanent military presence on the ground. And we can and will do the same thing in Afghanistan with our over-the-horizon counterterrorism capability. Cooperation with our closest partners on our enduring counterterrorism mission will continue to be an essential piece of our strategy. In short, we all of us agreed today that we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with our closest partners to meet the current challenges we face in Afghanistan, just as we have for the past 20 years. We're acting in consultation and cooperation with our closest friends and fellow democracies. And I want to again thank all of our allies and partners around the world who have rallied in support of our shared mission. We ended the conversation today by a clear statement on all of our parts. We are going to stay united, locked at the hip in terms of what we have to do. We'll get that done. And tomorrow, I've asked Secretary Blinken to give you an update and a detailed report on exactly how many Americans are still in Afghanistan, how many have gone out, and what our projection is. So thank you again, and God bless you, and may God protect our diplomats and all those in harm's way. Thank you.
Mr. President, can you guarantee every American will be out before the troops leave?
Sanctions,
Can you
Mr. President,
guarantee?
did sanctions come up at all in the G7 meetings?
We have a travel photo list. Yeah. That's funny, you can always count them. Ready, guys?
I didn't get bumped by one steal today. Oh, that's awesome.
You're looking out for it.
You guys are getting great.